November 15th, 1866, Jefferson Barracks, Missouri. A tall figure stands in the recruitment line, shoulders squared, jaw set. She was the only documented female Buffalo soldier in American history. You've never heard her name. That's not an accident. That's a conspiracy. This is the story they buried in pension rejection files. This is your stolen history. This is Cathay Williams, and what they did to her explains everything happening to Black women veterans right now today in 2025. How does a woman hide her identity for 2 years in an all-male regiment surrounded by dozens of soldiers every single day? Why did the Army work harder to erase her story than to honor her service? And what does her fight have to do with the fact that Black women veterans have the highest homelessness rate of any demographic in America right now? By the end of this video, you'll know the real reason the Army discharged Cathay Williams, and it wasn't about regulations. You'll understand why Black women's military service has been systematically erased for over 150 years. You'll see the direct line connecting her stolen pension in 1891 to Black women veterans being denied benefits today. And you'll never look at Memorial Day the same way again. This isn't just about one woman 150 years ago. This is about your grandmother who served in World War II and got no GI Bill benefits. This is about Black women carrying the entire military on their backs while being treated like they're invisible. This is about a theft that started in 1866 and is still happening right now. After this video, you'll understand why Black women veterans are homeless at nearly 9%, while male veterans are homeless at 4%. The morning air bites cold. A sergeant walks down the line checking teeth like livestock, measuring height, testing eyesight. You'll know the name of the policy that's been denying Black women their earned benefits for over a century. You'll be armed with truth they spent 150 years trying to bury, and you'll have a responsibility. Because once you know this truth, you can unknow it. Once you hear her name, you have to speak it. Cathay Williams fought for dignity she never received. You can give her that dignity now. But first, you need to know her story. The real story. Not the sanitized version, not the footnote, the whole truth. Let me take you back to 1844. Independence, Missouri. A child is born into slavery. Her mother is enslaved. Her father's identity is unknown, probably the white man who owns them. The child is named Cathay. She grows up working in the household of a man named William Johnson. She's not a field slave. She's a house slave, which white people like to pretend was somehow better, somehow kinder. It wasn't. It was just a different kind of hell. But Cathay learns things. She learns how white households operate. She learns how to read situations, read people. She learns how to make herself useful, how to anticipate needs, how to become indispensable. And she grows. Tall for a woman in that era, 5 feet 9 inches, strong from hard labor, shoulders broad, hands calloused. If you didn't look too close, if you saw her from a distance, you might not immediately clock her as female. Then 1861 arrives, and everything changes. The Civil War explodes across Missouri. Union troops occupy Independence. They're liberating slaves, technically. In reality, they're confiscating property from Confederate sympathizers. And enslaved people? Their property. So when Union soldiers take over the Johnson household, Cathay becomes what they call a contraband. Not free, not enslaved, just contraband. Government property now instead of private property. The Union Army needs workers, cooks, laundresses, nurses, laborers. Cathay gets put to work immediately. She's assigned to the 8th Indiana Volunteer Infantry Regiment. She cooks for officers. She washes blood out of uniforms. She tends wounded soldiers, holding them down, while surgeons saw off shattered limbs without anesthesia. She's 17 years old. And then the army starts moving. Arkansas, Louisiana, Georgia. Cathay goes with them. Not because she has a choice, because contraband workers follow the troops. She marches, 15 miles a day, 20 miles a day, sometimes more. She sleeps on the ground. She eats whatever rations they give her. She watches battles from behind the lines. She sees men die. She sees what war actually looks like. Not the glory they put in paintings, the screaming, the smell of gangrene. The way a man's eyes go empty when life leaves him. She spends 4 years like this. 4 years watching soldiers, watching how they walk, how they talk, how they stand. She watches black men join the Union Army. She watches them get uniforms, rifles pay. Respect, not equal respect. White soldiers still call them names, still treat them as less than. But they're soldiers. They have rank. They have purpose. They have $13 a month. Cathay watches, and she thinks. She's strong enough. She's tall enough. She's survived everything they've survived. Why shouldn't she be a soldier? Then the war ends. April 1865. Lee surrenders at Appomattox. The Union wins. Lincoln gets assassinated. And suddenly the army doesn't need thousands of contraband workers anymore. They start discharging them. No thank you for your service. No pension. No benefits. Just go away. You're free now. Figure it out. Cathay is 21 years old. She has no money, no home, no prospects. She's a freed black woman in a country that just spent 4 years tearing itself apart over whether she deserved to be human. And now that same country expects her to just disappear quietly into poverty. She doesn't disappear. She gets angry. She has a cousin, a friend, someone who knows her situation. This person says something that changes everything. You're tall enough. You're strong enough. Your voice is deep enough. Cut your hair. Bind your chest. You could pass. You could be a soldier. Think about what that meant. Think about the risk. If they catch you, best case scenario, you're discharged and humiliated. Worst case, you're arrested for fraud, maybe assaulted, maybe killed. And even if you succeed, even if you fool everyone, you have to maintain that lie every single second. You can't let your guard down. You can't relax. You can't be yourself, ever. Cathay decides it's worth it. Because what's her alternative? Poverty, prostitution, domestic work for white families who will abuse her. At least as a soldier, she'll have pay. She'll have a purpose. She'll have dignity. So she does it. She cuts her hair short. She finds men's clothing several sizes too large to hide her shape. She wraps cloth tight around her chest. She practices walking differently. Men walk with their shoulders back, their steps long and confident. Women are taught to make themselves small, to take up less space. Cathay learns to take up space. She practices her voice, makes it lower, rougher, uses fewer words. Men in the army don't chatter. They grunt, they curse, they speak in short sentences. She learns that language. She studies male soldiers, how they sit, how they eat, how they stand in formation. She memorizes it all. And then she picks a name, William Cathay. Her mother's name reversed, a tribute, a secret identity, a key to a door that was never supposed to open for her. November 15th, 1866. She walks into Jefferson Barracks in St. Louis. She stands in that recruitment line. And when the sergeant asks her name, she says William Cathay, and her voice doesn't shake. The physical examination is cursory at best. This is the thing people don't understand about military recruitment in 1866. They needed bodies. The frontier was hostile. White settlers were pushing west onto native land, and the army needed soldiers to protect them. The Buffalo Soldier regiments, the all-black units, they especially needed recruits, because white soldiers didn't want to serve alongside black men. So when William Cathay stands there, the sergeant checks the basics. Height, good. Teeth, good. Eyes, good. He doesn't do a thorough medical exam. He doesn't strip search recruits. He doesn't check closely because he doesn't care that much. Buffalo soldiers are cannon fodder in his mind anyway. Cathay signs the papers. She's in. Private William Cathay, 38th United States Infantry Regiment. Pay $13 a month. White soldiers get $16 for the same job, but she doesn't complain. $13 is $13 more than she had yesterday. She gets issued a uniform, blue wool coat, blue trousers, a kepi cap, brogans for her feet, a rifle. She's given a bunk in the barracks with 40 other men. And now, the real test begins. How do you sleep in a room with 40 men and hide the fact that you're a woman? You don't sleep deeply. You can't. You sleep lightly, always aware, always ready to wake up if someone gets too close. You sleep in your clothes. You never change in front of anyone. You claim you're modest, you're private, you're shy. Most men don't question it because they don't care. Bathing is harder. The army doesn't have private showers. They have communal wash areas. Cathay has to be strategic. She claims illness frequently. She says she'll wash later. She waits until night when most men are asleep and she washes quickly in the dark. Or she just doesn't bathe as often. A lot of soldiers don't. Hygiene standards in 1866 aren't what they are now. A soldier who smells isn't unusual. He stops in front of this recruit. 5 feet 9 inches, strong build, dark skin. He nods. Sign here. The other soldiers notice William Cathay is quiet. Private. Doesn't joke around much. Doesn't join the card games. Keeps to himself. Some probably think he's strange. But strange isn't the same as suspicious. And in a regiment of black soldiers who've all survived slavery, who've all been through hell, everyone's a little strange. Everyone's got trauma. No one pries too deep. Training begins. Drilling. Marching in formation. Learning to load and fire the Springfield rifle. Learning military discipline. Stand straight. Salute officers. Follow orders instantly and without question. Cathay does all of it. She's not the strongest soldier, but she's not the weakest either. She keeps up. She doesn't draw attention. That's the key. Don't be the best. Don't be the worst. Be invisible in the middle. December 1866. The 38th Infantry receives orders. They're being transferred to Fort Riley, Kansas. The regiment marches out. It's winter. It's cold. They march 15 to 20 miles a day through snow and freezing rain. Cathay marches with them. Her feet blister. Her muscles scream. But she doesn't complain because complaining marks you as weak. They reach Fort Riley in January 1867. It's a frontier fort. Rough conditions. The purpose is clear. Protect white settlers. Patrol the territory. Keep native tribes from reclaiming their own stolen land. The irony isn't lost on Cathay. She's a black woman pretending to be a black man, serving in an army that's helping white people steal land from indigenous people. But she needs the pay. She needs the purpose. So she does the job. Fort Riley is brutal. Guard duty in sub-zero temperatures. Fatigue duty, which means hard labor. Digging latrines, chopping wood, hauling supplies, escorting wagon trains through hostile territory. Every day is a test. Every day she has to maintain the disguise. Every day she's one slip away from discovery. And the disguise is getting harder to maintain because her body is betraying her. Living as a soldier is physically grueling. The marching, the labor, the inadequate food, the lack of sleep. Her health starts to deteriorate. She gets sick, fevers, aches, infections. When you're sick in the army, you have to see the post surgeon. That's terrifying for Cathay because a doctor examines you. A doctor asks questions. A doctor might notice things a sergeant missed. But she has no choice. She goes to sick call. The post surgeon examines her briefly. He notes the fever. He prescribes rest and quinine. He doesn't look too closely. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he sees what he expects to see, a black soldier who's weak from frontier life. He doesn't discover her secret. She goes back to duty, but this becomes a pattern. Cathay gets sick more often than the other soldiers. Some of it is probably because she's biologically female, and her body is dealing with menstruation on top of everything else. Some of it is probably stress, the constant fear of discovery, the inability to ever truly relax, the isolation. She can't have friends. She can't confide in anyone. She's utterly alone even when surrounded by people. March 1867. New orders. The regiment is marching to Fort Harker, Kansas. Another long march. More brutal conditions. They arrive in April. Fort Harker is even more primitive than Fort Riley. It's basically a collection of rough buildings on the open prairie. The wind never stops. The dust never settles. Water is scarce. Food is terrible. And the mission is the same. Patrol. Protect settlers. Suppress native resistance. Cathay does her duty. She stands guard. She goes on patrol. She escorts supply wagons. And she gets sicker. By June, she's ill enough that she spends several days in the post hospital. The surgeon examines her again. He notes chronic illness. He writes it in her medical record. But he still doesn't discover the truth. How is that possible? How does a doctor examine someone multiple times and not realize they're a different sex because they're not looking for it? Confirmation bias is powerful. When you expect to see a male soldier, you interpret everything through that lens. And medical exams in 1867 are less thorough than you think. There's no blood work, no detailed physical. Just look, listen, make a diagnosis, move on. The army has hundreds of soldiers. The doctor doesn't have time for thorough exams. Summer 1867. The heat is unbearable. Over 100 degrees. The uniform is wool. Cathay is binding her chest under that wool coat in 100-degree heat. She's developing heat rash, infections. She's in constant pain, but she can't complain. Complaining means more medical exams. Then in June, new orders again. The 38th Infantry is being sent to New Mexico territory. They're marching south, through Kansas, through Colorado, into the high desert of New Mexico. It's over 600 miles. They march it, all of it, on foot, carrying full packs, in the summer heat. Cathay marches with them. I don't know how she does it. The physical toll alone should have broken her. But she keeps going, one foot in front of the other, day after day, mile after mile. They reach Fort Union, New Mexico, in August. They've been marching for nearly 2 months. Fort Union is a major supply depot. It's bigger than the previous forts. More soldiers, more structure, but also more scrutiny. And Cathay is visibly unwell. The march destroyed her. She's lost weight. She's weak. She's sick constantly. September 1867. They transfer to Fort Cummings, New Mexico. It's a small isolated fort in Apache territory. The mission is clear. Protect the Butterfield Overland mail route. Fight Apache warriors who are defending their homeland. Cathay is now on the front lines of a war against indigenous people. She didn't sign up for this. Well, she did. But she signed up for survival. She signed up for pay. She didn't sign up to be a tool of genocide. But that's what the Buffalo Soldiers are. That's what she is. A black woman pretending to be a black man, serving as a tool of white expansionism. The contradictions must be overwhelming, but she doesn't have the luxury of moral contemplation. She has to survive. October 1867. She gets sick again. Really sick this time. High fever, can't stand, can't eat. The post surgeon admits her to the hospital. He examines her more thoroughly this time because she's so ill, he thinks she might die. And he notices something that doesn't quite fit, but he doesn't say anything. Not yet. Maybe he's not sure. Maybe he's seen anomalies before and learned not to ask questions. The army doesn't like complications. Cathay recovers enough to return to duty, but she's never the same. The illness broke something in her. She's weaker. She can't keep up on marches. She can't do the hard labor. Other soldiers start to notice, start to whisper. Why is William Cathay always sick? Why can't he pull his weight? Is he malingering? December 1867. They transfer to Fort Bayard, New Mexico. It's even more isolated than Fort Cummings. It's deep in Apache territory. It's dangerous. And Cathay is barely functional. She spends more time in the hospital than on duty. The post surgeon, a man named Dr. O.E. Smith, starts to get suspicious. Something about Private Cathay isn't right. The body shape, the way illness manifests, the pattern of symptoms. January 1868. Cathay is hospitalized again. Dr. Smith examines her carefully this time, and he discovers the truth. Private William Cathay is biologically female. Imagine that moment. Imagine the fear. Imagine knowing your secret is out. Imagine waiting to see what happens next. Will they arrest you? Court-martial you worse. Dr. Smith files a report. Command is notified, and they make a decision. They want her gone. Immediately. No trial, no court-martial, no public scandal. They just want her to disappear. October 14th, 1868. Private William Cathay is discharged from the United States Army. The official reason, certificate of disability for discharge. The real reason, she's a woman, and women are not allowed in the military. Her discharge papers cite disability. They don't mention sex. They don't want that in the official record because it would raise questions. How did a woman serve for almost 2 years without anyone noticing? How incompetent is Army leadership? So they bury it. They classify her discharge as medical. They give her $1.25 in remaining pay. And they tell her to leave. Go away. Disappear. Cathay Williams, age 24, is alone again. She has no money, no support, no home. She's in New Mexico territory, hundreds of miles from anywhere she knows. She's physically broken from 2 years of military service, and she has to go back to being a woman in a society that offers women almost nothing. She leaves Fort Bayard. She makes her way to Las Animas, Colorado. She finds work as a seamstress. It pays almost nothing. She barely survives. Her health is destroyed. The rheumatism she developed in the army never goes away. The chronic pain never stops. She's 24 years old, and her body is that of someone much older. She moves to Pueblo, Colorado. More seamstress work, more poverty. 1876. She marries briefly. The marriage fails. He leaves. She's alone again. The next 15 years are a blur of poverty and pain, moving from town to town, taking whatever work she can find, washing clothes, cooking, cleaning, surviving day by day. But Cathay doesn't forget. She doesn't forget that she served. She doesn't forget that she earned a pension. She watches male veterans collect their pensions. She watches them get medical care. She watches them be honored for their service. And she thinks I served too. Where's mine? 1891. Cathay Williams is 47 years old. She's living in Trinidad, Colorado. She's desperately poor. Her health is so bad she can barely work. She decides to apply for a military disability pension. She's entitled to it. She served. She was disabled by that service. The law says she qualifies. She files the paperwork. She provides affidavits proving her service. She has witnesses who remember Private William Cathay. She has discharge papers. She has documentation. everything the Pension Bureau requires. And then she waits. The Army investigates. They confirm she served. They confirm she was discharged for disability. They confirm everything she claimed is true. And then they deny her pension. The reason: fraudulent enlistment. By concealing her sex, she violated Army regulations. Therefore, her service doesn't count. Therefore, she's not entitled to benefits. Let me be clear about what just happened. The United States Army confirmed that Cathay Williams served honorably for 2 years. They confirmed she was disabled by that service. They confirmed she met every requirement for a pension. And then they said, "But you're a woman, so none of that matters. You don't get paid for work you did because you had the wrong body parts." The pen scratches across paper. William Cathay, Private 38th United States Infantry Regiment, Buffalo Soldiers. Pay $13 a month. Cathay appeals. She argues that she fulfilled every duty. She marched every mile. She stood every guard shift. She did everything male soldiers did, and she did it while hiding her identity, which made it twice as hard. She earned that pension. The Pension Bureau doesn't care. Denied. Final decision. No appeals. Cathay Williams disappears from the historical record after 1893. We don't know when she died. We don't know where she's buried. We know she lived in poverty. We know she was in pain. We know she died without ever receiving the pension she earned. And for 83 years, her story was buried in pension rejection files that no one looked at. 1976. A historian named Dr. Deanne Blanton is researching women who served in the military in disguise. She's going through old pension records, and she finds a file. Cathay Williams, the only documented black woman to serve in the Buffalo Soldiers, the only one who applied for a pension, the only one whose story survived. Dr. Blanton publishes her findings. Historians start researching. Cathay Williams' story slowly emerges from obscurity, but it takes decades. Decades before anyone cares. Decades before the Army acknowledges her. And even now in 2025, most people have never heard her name. Think about that. Think about what it means. The United States Army erased a black woman veteran from history for over a century. They denied her the pension she earned. They classified her service as fraud. They made sure no one would know her name. And they did it because acknowledging her would mean acknowledging something they couldn't allow. That black women are capable of military service. That black women can do everything men can do. That the entire system of exclusion is built on lies. But here's what they didn't count on. Here's what they couldn't predict. That eventually someone would find her file. That eventually someone would tell her story. That eventually people like you would hear her name. Cathay Williams. Say it. Remember it. Because they tried to erase her, and they failed. Now you need to understand something crucial. Cathay Williams wasn't unique. She wasn't the only woman who served in disguise. She was just the only black woman whose story we know for certain. Historians estimate around 400 women served disguised as men during the Civil War alone. We know the names of about 60 of them. Almost all of those names are white women. Let me tell you about Deborah Sampson, 1782. Revolutionary War. She enlisted as Robert Shirtliff in the 4th Massachusetts Regiment. She served for 17 months. She was wounded twice. Once she dug a musket ball out of her own thigh, rather than let a doctor examine her and discover her sex. Eventually, she got sick with a fever. A doctor discovered the truth. She was honorably discharged. And then here's what happened. Deborah Sampson received a military pension. She gave public lectures about her service. She became famous. She was celebrated as a patriot. Paul Revere wrote letters supporting her pension claim. The government paid her. She died in 1827 and she died honored. Deborah Sampson was white. Cathay Williams was black. They did the same thing. They served in disguise. They were both discovered. One became a celebrated hero. The other was erased from history and denied every benefit. Why? Because white women's military service could be framed as patriotic dedication. Black women's military service revealed that black women were just as capable as anyone else, and that truth threatened the entire racial hierarchy. Let me tell you about another woman, Loretta Janetta Velasquez, Confederate soldier, served as Lieutenant Harry Buford. She wrote an entire memoir about it in 1876 called The Woman in Battle. Her story was publicized, debated, questioned, but remembered. She fought for the Confederacy. She fought to preserve slavery, and her story was preserved. Cathay Williams fought for freedom. Cathay Williams fought for the Union, and her story was buried. Do you see the pattern? White women who served in disguise got pensions, books, lectures, fame. A black woman who did the exact same thing got denial, erasure, poverty. This wasn't coincidence. This was policy. One more. Jenny Hodgers, also known as Albert Cashier, served in the 95th Illinois Infantry during the Civil War, served the entire war, then lived as a man for over 50 years after the war, received a military pension until death in 1915. When people discovered the truth, it became national news. Newspapers covered it. People were fascinated. The government continued the pension even after discovery. Jenny Hodgers was white. The story was treated as fascinating, eccentric, but ultimately honorable. Cathay Williams served half as long, was denied everything, and disappeared into poverty. Same actions, different outcomes. Why race? It always comes back to race. Here's what the evidence proves. At least 400 women served in disguise during the Civil War. Historians estimate 5 to 10% of those were black women. That means 20 to 40 black women likely served. We know the name of exactly one, Cathay Williams. What happened to the other 19 to 39? We don't know. Their stories were erased so completely we don't even have names. But we can guess what happened to them based on what happened to Cathay. They served. They were discovered. Or they served their term and left quietly. They tried to get pensions. They were denied. They lived in poverty. They died forgotten. And the army made sure no one would ever know their names. This was systematic. This wasn't individual prejudice. This was institutional policy. The army kept records of white women who served because those stories reinforced white women's patriotism. They buried black women's stories because those stories proved black women's capability, and that truth was dangerous. Think about what that means for everything else you were taught. If they erased black women, soldiers, this thoroughly, what else did they erase? What other stories? What other achievements? What other proof of excellence? The answer is thousands of stories, tens of thousands, entire communities, entire histories, all buried, all erased, all because the truth threatened white supremacy. And this brings us to right now. Because Cathay Williams' story isn't just history, it's happening today. Right now. Black women veterans are being denied benefits at higher rates than any other demographic. Let me give you the numbers, and they're going to make you angry. 2023 data. Black women veterans experience homelessness at a rate of 8.9%. Male veterans overall, 4.2%. Black women veterans are more than twice as likely to be homeless as male veterans. Think about that. Women who served their country are sleeping on streets at double the rate of men who served. Employment. Black women veterans are 2.5 times more likely to be unemployed compared to white women veterans. Same military training, same dedication. Different outcomes based on race and gender. VA disability claims. Black women are denied at a rate 38% higher than white women. When they file for disability benefits, they earned through service-connected injuries or illnesses. They're rejected more often. Why? Because the VA uses the same logic the Pension Bureau used against Cathay Williams. Find a technicality. Find a reason to deny. Make them give up. The appeals process. When black women appeal denied claims, they wait an average of 847 days for resolution. White men wait 612 days. That's an extra 235 days of waiting, while homeless, while in pain, while struggling to survive. Military sexual trauma. Black women report sexual assault at 3 times the rate of white women in the military, but they receive help and support at 1/3 the rate. They're more likely to be assaulted and less likely to get care. The system punishes them twice. These aren't coincidences. These are the same patterns that destroyed Cathay Williams. Deny benefits, make them wait, find excuses, exhaust them until they give up. The Pension Bureau did it to Cathay Williams in 1891. The VA is doing it to black women veterans in 2025. Same playbook, same racism, same result. Cathay Williams was denied her pension 134 years ago, and today black women veterans are still being denied at the highest rates. If that doesn't make you angry, check your pulse. Here's the connection you need to understand. When the Army erased Cathay Williams from history, they weren't just hiding one woman's story. They were establishing a precedent. They were saying black women's military service doesn't count. Black women's sacrifices don't matter. Black women's contributions can be ignored, and that precedent has held for over 150 years. Every time a black woman veteran gets denied a benefit claim today, that's Cathay Williams being denied all over again. Every time a black woman veteran becomes homeless after serving her country, that's Cathay Williams dying in poverty all over again. Every time a black woman's military story goes untold, that's Cathay Williams being erased all over again. The system isn't broken. The system is working exactly as designed. It was designed to exclude black women. It was designed to deny black women. It was designed to erase black women. And until we expose that design, until we name it, until we dismantle it, nothing changes. Now let me show you how they did it. Let me show you the actual mechanisms of erasure. Because understanding how they buried Cathay Williams teaches you how they're burying black women veterans today. The tactics are the same. The institutions are the same. Only the dates have changed. First mechanism, legal suppression. The Army had regulations. Women were not allowed to serve. When Cathay Williams was discovered, they didn't court-martial her. They didn't put her on trial. They just discharged her quietly with a disability classification. Why? Because a trial would create a public record. A trial would mean newspaper coverage. A trial would mean people asking questions. Like, how did a woman serve for 2 years without anyone noticing? How competent is Army leadership if they can't tell the difference? So they made it disappear. Disability discharge, medical reason, no scandal, no questions, just gone. Then when she applied for a pension, they had their excuse ready. Fraudulent enlistment. She concealed her sex. That's a violation of regulations. Therefore, her service doesn't count. Never mind that she did the work. Never mind that she earned the pay. Never mind that she was disabled by that service. The regulation says women can't serve, so she never served. Legally, officially, she didn't exist. This is the same tactic they use today. When black women veterans file disability claims, the VA looks for reasons to deny. Not reasons to approve. Reasons to deny. Service connection insufficient. Documentation incomplete. Claim filed incorrectly. They don't say we won't pay you because you're black and female. They say we won't pay you because of this technicality. Same result, different language. The 1890 Dependent Pension Act expanded benefits for veterans. Thousands of white veterans got pensions. But the act included a clause. Anyone discharged for fraud was ineligible. Cathay Williams fell into that category. Her concealment of sex was classified as fraud. So even though the law expanded benefits, she was specifically excluded by that one clause. Today, the VA has similar exclusions. They have regulations that sound neutral but function to exclude. Like requiring specific documentation that black women are less likely to have. Like requiring buddy statements from other soldiers. But black women who experienced sexual assault often can't get those statements because the perpetrators were other soldiers. Like denying claims for PTSD because the traumatic event wasn't combat-related, even though military sexual trauma causes the same PTSD symptoms. These aren't accidents. These are features of the system. The system was designed to pay white male veterans. Everyone else has to fight through a maze of barriers, and most people give up. That's the point. Make it so hard that people stop trying. The sergeant doesn't know William Cathay was born Cathay Williams. A woman. Second mechanism. Record manipulation. Cathay Williams' service record exists. We know this because her pension file references it. But her service record is not filed with the other Buffalo soldiers. It's not filed with the 38th Infantry Regiment. It's filed under fraudulent enlistments, a category that's rarely searched, a category that's designed to hide. When historians started researching Buffalo soldiers in the 1960s and 1970s, they looked in the normal places: regiment histories, muster rolls, service records. Cathay Williams wasn't there. So historians concluded there were no women Buffalo soldiers. They wrote books saying so. They taught classes saying so. And for decades, that became accepted truth. It took one historian going through pension rejection files that weren't supposed to have anything interesting to find Cathay Williams. One historian, one accident of thorough research. If Dr. Deanne Blanton hadn't looked in that specific file in 1976, we might still not know Cathay Williams existed. How many other stories are filed wrong? How many other black women soldiers are buried in the wrong category, classified incorrectly, hidden deliberately, so no one will find them? We don't know. We can't know. That's the point of the system. Today, the VA does the same thing. Black women veterans' claims are processed differently. Studies show that claims from black veterans are more likely to be assigned to less experienced raters, more likely to be denied on first review, more likely to require appeals. And every time a claim is denied, it creates a paper trail that makes future claims harder. Denied claim history becomes evidence of insufficient service connection. The system uses your past denials to justify future denials. It's circular. It's designed to trap you. Fort Bayard, where Cathay Williams was discharged, kept historical records. Those records don't mention her. The official history of the 38th Infantry Regiment doesn't mention her. The Army's own Buffalo soldiers' documentation compiled decades later doesn't mention her. Even after her story was rediscovered in 1976, it took decades for the Army to acknowledge her officially. Military museums didn't include her. The Buffalo Soldiers National Museum in Houston didn't have a Cathay Williams exhibit until the 2000s. The National Museum of African American History and Culture, opened in 2016, has a brief mention. Brief. One woman who served when women weren't allowed. One woman who proved black women could do anything. And she gets a brief mention. Compare that to white women who served. Molly Pitcher, who probably didn't exist as a single person, but rather as a composite legend, has multiple statues. Deborah Sampson has statues, plaques, schools named after her. Cathay Williams, who definitely existed, who definitely served, gets one small building at Fort Leavenworth, named after her in 2021. That's it. One building. 153 years after her discharge. The erasure was deliberate. Every institution that should have preserved her story chose not to. The army chose not to. The museums chose not to. The historians chose not to. The textbook writers chose not to. And that pattern of choosing continued for over a century. Today, Black women veterans face the same institutional amnesia. Their contributions are minimized. Their sacrifices are overlooked. Media coverage of veterans focuses on men. Memorial Day tributes focus on men. Veterans organizations are male-dominated. Black women veterans exist in the margins, fighting for recognition, fighting for benefits, fighting to be seen. Third mechanism, educational erasure. Civil War history is taught in every American school. Students learn about battles, general strategies. Some schools teach about the Buffalo Soldiers, brave black soldiers fighting for a country that didn't treat them as equal. Inspirational story, overcame adversity, served with honor. But in all those lessons, in all those textbooks, how many mention that women served? How many mention Cathay Williams? Almost none. I taught history for years before I knew her name. Most history teachers don't know. Most textbooks don't include her. And the few that mention women soldiers focus on white women. This creates a false narrative. Students learn that black soldiers were all men. They learn that women's military service began in World War I or World War II, with nurses and support staff. They learn that combat roles for women are new, modern, progressive. All lies. Women fought in the Revolutionary War. Women fought in the Civil War. Black women fought. Native women fought. They've always fought. But the curriculum erases them. Why? Because teaching about Cathay Williams means teaching uncomfortable truths. It means teaching that the army discriminated. It means teaching that black women were denied benefits they earned. It means teaching that institutional racism is baked into military policy. And schools don't want to teach that. Schools want to teach patriotic narratives. Honor, duty, service, not theft, denial, erasure. So Cathay Williams gets left out. And students grow up not knowing. And those students become adults who don't know. And those adults don't push for change because they don't know there's a problem. Ignorance perpetuates injustice. That's the function of educational erasure. Today, the same thing happens. Schools teach about modern veterans. They have Veterans Day assemblies. They invite speakers. But how often do they invite black women, veterans? How often do they talk about the specific challenges black women face? Almost never. The narrative stays focused on male veterans, on heroic service, on honor and sacrifice. The reality of discrimination, denial, homelessness that gets left out. Fourth mechanism, cultural erasure. Movies about the Civil War focus on white soldiers or white perspectives on black soldiers. Glory, the famous film about black soldiers, won Denzel Washington an Oscar. Great film, powerful, important. No women in combat roles, none. The 54th Massachusetts Regiment probably had women. We don't know because records were destroyed or misfiled or never kept. But Hollywood's version is all men. Movies about Buffalo Soldiers, same thing. All male casts. Women appear as wives, mothers, prostitutes. Never as soldiers. Never as equals. The cultural imagination cannot conceive of black women as warriors because the culture has been taught they weren't. And they were taught they weren't because the stories were erased. Documentaries about women in the military start with World War I. They talk about nurses in World War I. women pilots in World War II, wrecks and waves. Important stories. But why start there? Why not start with the Revolutionary War? Why not start with the Civil War? Because starting there means admitting that women's military service is not new. It means admitting that the barriers to women in combat were always artificial. It means admitting that institutions lied. Museums did the same thing. Military museums celebrated male soldiers. Women's history museums celebrated nurses, teachers, activists. The intersection women soldiers fell through the cracks. And black women soldiers fell through even more cracks. Not quite military history, not quite women's history, not quite black history. So nobody told their stories. Cathay Williams existed at that intersection. Black, woman, soldier. Three identities that the culture couldn't process simultaneously. So the culture chose to forget her entirely. Easier than reconciling the contradiction. And today, black women veterans exist at the same impossible intersection. The military sees them as women first questions their capability. Society sees them as black first subjects them to racism. Feminists often ignore them because they served in a patriarchal institution. Black communities sometimes ignore them because they served an oppressive government. Nobody claims them. Nobody advocates for them. They fall through every crack. Now here's where it gets personal. Here's where this becomes about you. Because this history isn't in the past. This history is right now. The same system that denied Cathay Williams her pension is denying black women veterans their benefits today. The same institutions that erased her story are erasing black women veterans' stories today. The same culture that couldn't acknowledge her existence is ignoring black women veterans' homelessness today. And you have a choice. You can learn this story and do nothing. Or you can learn this story and recognize your responsibility. Because now you know. Now you can't claim ignorance. Now you have to decide what you're going to do with this knowledge. Let me tell you what's at stake. Right now, thousands of black women veterans are fighting the VA for benefits they earned. They're filing claims. They're being denied. They're appealing. They're waiting. They're struggling. Some are homeless. Some are in pain. Some are dying. And most people don't know. Most people don't care. Because their stories aren't told. Right now, young black girls are deciding whether to join the military. They're weighing the benefits against the risks. And nobody's telling them the truth. Nobody's telling them that if they serve, they might be denied benefits later. Nobody's telling them that the military has a history of using black women's labor and then discarding them. Nobody's preparing them for what they'll face. Right now, historians are writing books about military history. Museum curators are designing exhibits. Teachers are planning lessons. And most of them are leaving out black women veterans. Not because they're actively malicious, but because they don't know. Because they weren't taught. Because the erasure is so complete that even well-meaning people perpetuate it. This is where you come in. You know now. You know Cathay Williams' name. You know her story. You know the pattern. And you have power. The power to speak. The power to share. The power to demand change. The power to refuse erasure. If this truth hit you, if learning about Cathay Williams made you angry, comment stolen below. Because that's what this is. Stolen service, stolen benefits, stolen recognition, stolen dignity. Type stolen. If you understand that this was theft. If you're tired of black women's stories being erased, comment no more. Because it has to stop. The erasure has to stop. The denial has to stop. The cycle has to break. Type no more if you're committed to breaking it. And hit that like button. Not for me. For Cathay Williams. For every black woman veteran who died without recognition. For every black woman soldier whose name we'll never know. Hit that like button as an act of remembrance, as an act of resistance against erasure. Share this video. Share it with Black women veterans who need to know they're part of a legacy. Share it with young Black girls who need to know their strength isn't new. Share it with anyone who thinks Black women haven't always been warriors. Share it with everyone who needs to understand that institutional racism isn't ancient history. It's policy. It's ongoing. It's deliberate. This is how we resurrect the dead. We speak their names. We tell their stories. We refuse to let them be forgotten again. Cathay Williams. Say it out loud right now. Cathay Williams. She was real. She served. She earned. She was denied. And we will not let her be erased again. Now let me connect this to something even bigger. Because Cathay Williams' story is part of a larger pattern. A pattern of how this country treats Black excellence. Every time Black people build something, every time Black people achieve something, every time Black people prove their capability, the system destroys it, or erases it, or denies it. Every single time. You need to understand this pattern because it's still happening. It explains why Black wealth was destroyed systematically. It explains why Black achievements are left out of textbooks. It explains why Black communities that thrived were burned down. It explains everything. Cathay Williams proved Black women could be soldiers. The system couldn't allow that proof to stand. So they erased her. But she wasn't alone. She was part of a pattern that stretches across centuries. Let me show you. 1921, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Greenwood District, Black Wall Street. Over 300 Black-owned businesses, banks, hotels, theaters, newspapers. A thriving Black community with more millionaires per capita than anywhere in America. Black people building wealth. Black people thriving. Black people proving they didn't need white permission to succeed. And then on May 31st and June 1st, white mobs attacked. They burned 35 city blocks. They murdered an estimated 300 Black residents. They dropped incendiary devices from airplanes. They used machine guns. They destroyed $32 million in property. In today's dollars, that's over $200 million. Gone, burned, stolen. And then they erased it, removed it from textbooks, changed the name from massacre to riot, blamed Black people for their own destruction. For 75 years, Oklahoma schools didn't teach it. 3 generations grew up not knowing. The erasure was so complete that many Tulsa residents didn't know it happened until the 1990s. Same pattern. Black excellence, destruction, erasure. Just like Cathay Williams. She proved Black women could be soldiers. They discharged her, denied her pension, and buried her story. Greenwood proved Black people could build wealth. They burned it, stole it, and erased it from history. For the next 2 years, a Black woman will march hundreds of miles through hostile territory. She'll survive smallpox, desert heat, brutal winters. 1898, Wilmington, North Carolina. Fusion government. Black and white Republicans working together. Black men in positions of power. A Black newspaper editor named Alex Manley writing truth. A thriving Black middle class. Proof that multiracial democracy could work. Proof that Black political power was legitimate. White supremacists couldn't tolerate it. November 10, 1898. Armed white men, hundreds of them, staged a coup. The only successful coup in American history. They destroyed the Black newspaper. They murdered Black residents. Estimates range from 60 to 300. They forced the integrated government to resign at gunpoint. They installed an all-white government. They drove Black professionals out of the city. And then they rewrote history, called it a race riot, said Black people started it, justified it as restoring order. Textbooks taught it that way for a century. The coup became a heroic restoration. The victims became aggressors. The truth was inverted, and the inversion was taught as fact. Same pattern. Black political power, destruction, erasure, inversion of truth. Just like Cathay Williams, just like Tulsa. The pattern repeats because the pattern works. 1919, Elaine, Arkansas. Black sharecroppers organizing, demanding fair payment for their cotton, daring to challenge the plantation system, proving that black people could organize, could demand rights, could fight exploitation. White landowners panicked. They called in federal troops. They called it an insurrection. They rounded up hundreds of black people. They tortured confessions. They held mass trials. They sentenced 12 black men to death. And they killed between 100 and 240 black people in the fields and woods. Exact number unknown, because nobody counted black bodies. The narrative became about black uprising, about Negro violence, about the need to control the black population. The truth that black people were murdered for demanding fair wages was buried. The story was inverted. Victims became threats. Murderers became defenders. Same pattern. Black economic organization, mass murder, narrative inversion, erasure of truth. How many times do I have to say it before you see it? This is not isolated incidents. This is systematic policy. Rosewood, Florida, 1923. Black town, prosperous, independent. A white woman in nearby Sumner claims a black man assaulted her. She's lying. Her white lover beat her, and she needs a cover story. But truth doesn't matter. White mobs form. They attack Rosewood. They burn every structure. They murder residents. Exact number unknown, estimates say dozens to hundreds. Survivors flee into the swamps. The town ceases to exist. And Florida buries it. Doesn't teach it. Doesn't acknowledge it. The town is erased from maps. For 70 years it's forgotten. Only survivor testimony keeps it alive, and survivors are dying. Same pattern. Black prosperity, white violence, complete erasure. Just like all the others. Just like Cathay Williams. The pattern is clear once you see it. Now, do you understand? Do you see what they've done? Every time black people prove their excellence, the system destroys the proof. Every time black people build wealth, the wealth is stolen or burned. Every time black people achieve power, that power is violently removed. And then the system erases the evidence, changes the story, blames the victims, teaches lies to the next generation. Cathay Williams is part of this pattern. She proved black women could be. Soldiers could serve with honor, could do everything men did. The system couldn't allow that proof to stand because it threatened two hierarchies at once. Racial hierarchy and gender hierarchy. So they erased her, just like they erased Tulsa, Wilmington, Elaine, Rosewood, and hundreds of other stories. This is why you were never taught this history, because teaching the truth means admitting the system is designed to suppress black excellence. Teaching the truth means admitting that black poverty isn't natural or deserved. It's engineered. It's the result of centuries of theft and destruction. Teaching the truth means white America has to confront what it's done, and white America doesn't want to do that. So they erase. They forget. They teach sanitized versions. They say slavery was bad, but it ended. They say discrimination was wrong, but it's over. They say, look how far we've come, and they never mention the wealth that was stolen, the communities that were burned, the soldiers who were denied, the pattern that continues. Because it does continue, the pattern didn't stop in 1923 or 1950 or 1968. It's still happening. The tactics changed. The violence became structural instead of physical. But the result is the same. Black excellence is suppressed. Black wealth is prevented. Black achievement is denied. Let me show you the modern version. Gentrification. Black neighborhoods that survived urban renewal that rebuilt after destruction, that became stable and valuable. And then suddenly, white people want to live there. Property values spike, taxes increase. Black families who've lived there for generations can't afford it anymore. They're forced out. The neighborhood turns white. Wealth is transferred from black to white. Again, that's modern land theft. It's Tulsa without the fire. It's Wilmington without the guns. Same result. Black people lose, white people gain. Wealth transfer disguised as market forces. Mass incarceration. Slavery by another name. 13th Amendment says slavery is abolished, except as punishment for crime. So they criminalize black existence. War on drugs targets. Black communities, even though drug use rates are similar across races. Police flood black neighborhoods. Arrest rates skyrocket. Prison populations explode. And prisoners work for pennies, or for free. Slavery. They just renamed it. That's modern control. It's the plantation system updated for the 21st century. Can't own slaves legally, so imprison them instead. Same forced labor, same broken families, same destruction of black communities, police brutality, lynching by another name. Black people killed by police at 3 times the rate of white people. Killed for selling cigarettes, killed for sleeping in their own beds, killed for existing while black. And the officers almost never face consequences. Just like the white mobs in Tulsa and Rosewood faced no consequences. That's modern terrorism. It's the KKK with badges. Same purpose. Keep black people afraid. Keep black people controlled. Make sure black people know that black life has no value in this system. The wealth gap, the culmination of centuries of theft. Median white household wealth, $188,000. Median black household wealth, $24,000. That's not an accident. That's not because black people don't work hard. That's the result of Tulsa and Rosewood and Wilmington and Elaine and redlining and job discrimination and denial of GI Bill benefits and police brutality and mass incarceration and on and on and on. That wealth gap represents stolen inheritance. If Tulsa hadn't been burned, those families would be millionaires today. If redlining hadn't prevented home ownership, black families would have generational wealth today. If the GI Bill had been applied equally, black veterans' children would have inherited property and education. The wealth gap is theft, ongoing theft, generational theft, and Cathay Williams is part of that theft. She earned a pension. She was denied. If she had received that pension, she could have built a life. She could have left something for her descendants. She could have contributed to black community wealth. But she was denied. Her potential wealth was stolen. Multiply that by thousands of black women veterans denied over 150 years. Multiply it by millions of black people denied opportunity, denied justice, denied what they earned. And you get a $24,000 median household wealth versus $188,000. That's why Cathay Williams matters now. Her story isn't just interesting history. Her story explains your present reality. It explains why black families struggle, why black communities lack resources, why black veterans are homeless. It's all connected. It's all part of the same system. The system that denied Cathay Williams is the system that created the wealth gap. Same system, same purpose, different tactics. So when people say slavery was long ago, show them Cathay Williams. She served in 1866 to 1868. After slavery. She was denied a pension in 1891. After slavery. And black women veterans are being denied benefits in 2025. That's not ancient history. That's 3 points on a continuous line stretching 159 years. When people say reparations are impractical, show them the math. Cathay Williams was owed approximately $3,000 to $5,000 in lifetime pension benefits. In today's dollars, around $100,000 to $150,000. Multiply that by thousands of denied black veterans. Multiply it by millions of black families denied opportunity. The number is in the trillions. And that's just the measurable economic harm. The psychological harm, the cultural harm, the loss of potential, that's incalculable. When people say systemic racism doesn't exist, show them Cathay Williams' pension file. Show them the VA denial rates. Show them the wealth gap. Show them the pattern. Systems don't have to be explicitly racist to produce racist outcomes. They just have to be designed to advantage one group and disadvantage another. And then they run on autopilot. The system that denied Cathay Williams didn't require every individual clerk to be actively racist. It just required regulations that excluded women policies, that classified her service as fraud bureaucratic procedures, that made appeals nearly impossible, and cultural assumptions that black women's service didn't matter. Once those structures were in place, the system produced racist outcomes automatically. That's systemic racism. That's why it's so hard to fight. Because you're not fighting individual bad actors. You're fighting institutional design, and that design is still functioning. The VA regulations that deny black women at higher rates don't say deny black women. They use neutral language, but the effect is discriminatory. The educational system that leaves out Cathay Williams doesn't explicitly say erase black women. It just focuses on other stories. But the effect is erasure. The cultural narratives that ignore black women veterans don't explicitly say they don't matter. They just center other experiences. But the effect is invisibility. This is what you're up against. This is why knowing Cathay Williams' story matters. Because her story reveals the design. It shows you how the system works. And once you see how it works, you can fight it. She'll guard settlers, escort supply wagons, stand watch through freezing nights. She'll do everything her male comrades do. And she'll do it while hiding the truth every single moment of every single day. And when they finally discover who she is, the United States Army will discharge her, immediately deny her pension, and spend the next century erasing her name from every record they can find.